Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Chad Carbone. Chad is the Director of Outdoor Operations at Bridge House Ready to Work, a nonprofit in Boulder, Colorado that helps individuals experiencing homelessness find stable work, housing, and support through its Ready to Work program. Now, Chad struggled with addiction for years and eventually finding himself homeless for nearly 12 years. But this isn't a story of defeat. It's a story of resilience, hope, and purpose. After receiving help from multiple people along the way, Chad now dedicates himself to helping others overcome similar challenges. Under his leadership, Bridge House continues to expand its outdoor social enterprise initiatives, offering paid employment and job training to people in need. Ready to Work has received recognition from local media, including the Daily Camera and 9 News, for its positive results in reducing homelessness and improving lives. Today, the program also reports a strong success rate of transitioning participants into stable housing. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. Imagine being able to give your employees free access to doctors, therapists, and prescription medications. And here's the fun part. The program actually puts more money into your employees' pockets, and the company's too. One recent client was able to increase net profits by $900 per employee per year. Now, results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, the Director of Outdoor Operations at Bridge House, Chad Carbone. Thanks for making the time to share your story today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. So, Chad, let's just jump right in. Before your struggles with addiction and homelessness came about, what was life for you like?
Well, I was adopted at 18 months old into a wonderful family. Just mom and dad. My grandparents lived next door. I grew up on a small little farm with chickens and ducks, and we were always camping, doing something. We were involved. My mom was the best person there ever was to get you ready for holidays. She got every holiday we had tons of stuff, and mom made growing up very fun. She would play with us as kids, my sister and I, and get our imaginations into things. However, later in life, I recognized some indicators about addiction in my youth, like watching the old Warner Brothers cartoons, and when there would be a jug with the triple X on it, I would pretend to do the same thing they were doing. Mm. So I used to pretend to get drunk before I even knew what alcohol was.
Okay.
But I think I've always struggled with addiction. I was what we call a maintaining addict after high school and in my working years until I wasn't a maintaining addict. And I just couldn't get to work anymore and couldn't do life the way I was doing it.
And what specifically were your addiction struggles? Was it specifically alcohol? Were there other substances?
It started with alcohol. I grew up out just outside of Boulder in the 80s. And drugs were quite prevalent around here when I was young. Most of the time it was not so much cannabis, but alcohol, acid, mushrooms. I had a friend who's had access to large amounts of cocaine, stuff like that. I just dabbled with the harder stuff when I was younger. Really didn't smoke pot until I was in my mid-20s. So that's when everything really kind of started going downhill.
When you started smoking pot specifically, or?
No, in my mid-20s. I'm sorry, but no. But
Okay.
It didn't help anything because it's the ultimate demotivator, and I'd rather stay home and have a beer and watch TV.
Got it. So started out maybe with some like party casual drinking in high school, and started to go downhill from there. Is that what I'm understanding?
Definitely. Well, I think I tried to drink every last bit of alcohol when I was
Okay.
when I was a youngster. Things were a lot different, in rural America at that time. Drinking and driving really wasn't a big deal, and drinking wasn't a big deal at all. I mean, where I grew up, DUIs really even weren't even given out until the mid '90s.
Mm,
So um, it was pretty loose around here.
got it. Okay. And so is that what ultimately somehow led you into homelessness? You said at some point you couldn't maintain, you couldn't get to work.
Uh, there was multiple factors. One was I uh, I was drinking and using drugs pretty heavily while I was working and able to do so. But I had a girlfriend. We dated for about 3 years, and I left for a weekend canoe trip with my family and came back. And yeah, I was getting really close to maybe asking this girl to marry me. And came back, called her, and she said, "I don't like you no more. Don't call me."
Uh,
And I went from spending all my time in another city with her, and I owned my own home at that time. I was doing pretty good driving a truck. Um, I didn't know what the people in my house were doing that I rented to. So all of a sudden, I had all this time, and lo and behold, they were freebasing all day long. So um, I went, I kind of skipped a step on cocaine from starting from lines to foilies to freebasing. I went straight to freebasing, and within 7 months, I lost my home and I was in rehab.
okay.
And
And how
then
did that stint in rehab go?
it was a 30-day deal. It broke me of cocaine, but nothing else. Actually checked myself into a halfway house, which was a lot of people thought was weird, but I was like, I can't go back to what I was doing. And I didn't last long there before I got thrown out, and still kind of maintained for a couple more years before, I was in my grandma's basement living there. Grandma let me live there next door to my mom's house. And one day, my mom and dad came in, literally kicked the door down, threw a bag at me and said, pack some shit, you're leaving.
Uh,
And they dumped me off in Denver and said, "Don't come back." So, that was a tough time. That was my first experience with homelessness. Um, you know, uh, the stigmas and what you hear in the media, it gives you a certain idea that it's really scary and dangerous, which it is, but not as bad as what the media makes you think it is. Does that make sense?
a
Um,
little bit. What specifically took place that led to your parents
uh,
dropping you off in Denver?
you know, my 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 mom and grandma. My mom finally, we call them enablers. My grandma was an enabler. My mom was an enabler, and my mom couldn't take it anymore, and she went to an Al-Anon meeting and learned just how much enabling her and her mom were doing for me, and that's when they made the decision to do this. It's probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
Wow. How so? Here it is. The people that you love that helped to raise you, they're kicking you out. They're putting you on the streets, dropping you off in Denver. And you look back on that and say it's one of the best things that ever happened.
Well, I had to experience things in my life before I could have one, and
Mm.
that's where it started. Um, I couldn't have ended up where I am today any other way. I don't.
Let's explore that a little bit. And you made the point of saying that it is scary being on the streets, but it's not the way that it's portrayed in the media. What set the
Well,
record straight? What is it like? First
well,
person experience.
the first few nights you don't really get much sleep. You really don't know where to go, and then you just really start paying attention to what other people are doing and kind of figuring that stuff out. But in your mind, you're like, um, am I going to be attacked in the middle of the night? Am I going to be robbed? Is what's going to happen to me? And you get over those fears pretty quickly because you have to. You don't really have much of a choice. And I didn't know much about shelters or food banks or anything like that at the time, so I had to learn all of that. Um, and once you learn a lot of that stuff, it makes it a little easier. I was never one to really stay in shelters. Of course, I didn't like the rules. Um, but the shelter that was available to me in Boulder County, it wasn't where you could just show up and go in. You had to pick a number out of a like a bowl, a poker chip with a number on it. And if your number didn't get called, you didn't get in. So it's cold, it's dark, and it's 4 or 5 miles away from where you need to be, and you just wasted 2 hours of your time. And then you'd have to figure out a way to get back to where we're back to where everything is, and just go to sleep somewhere. So, I kind of stopped doing that, and we had what we called squats out there. So I had like 5 or 6 different ones around town, where you could go and feel safe. It was kind of like your home.
What were those places?
Bushes, places that, line of sight mostly for me. In Boulder, the cops at the time were giving out camping tickets no matter what. So, I would pick a place where the only way you could see me is if you're standing in one particular place.
Okay.
So, if you're like, for instance, next to the creek here in Boulder on downtown where Broadway goes over the river, if you're standing on the bridge on top, looking down to where I was, you could see me, but you couldn't see me from anywhere else.
So you turned into a scout looking for these locations, or were these locations ones that you shared with other people on the street that were kind of known in your circles?
No, you only do that once before you learn, you just gave up your place to go because all of a sudden all these other people are there. I was pretty picky. I really didn't take too many people, and trust is hard to have out on the streets. You have acquaintances, but you don't make friends.
Mm-hmm. So how is it you started to learn sort of the ins and outs? Like, did somebody give you some education along the way? Somebody point you in different directions towards the shelters, the food banks, et cetera?
No. I used to call it, and it's a lot of us, I probably picked it up from another person, but we'd say, follow the turtles. And that's, you have a 60-pound bag on your back, you kind of look like a turtle walking down the street. So, in Boulder, which is much smaller than, most cities where homelessness is, everything's within walking distance. And once you learn the patterns and when things open and close, you just knew where to be. I try to tell people being homeless was a full-time job. I probably worked harder being homeless than actually having a job and living in a house.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you got to start your day. I used to start my day way early, but that's another story. But you have to be up before 4:35 so you don't get a ticket from the cops. Then you got to try to find a place to go until other things open up around 8 or 9. And I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Sometimes I blank out.
That's okay. Yeah, you were saying that you worked harder being homeless than at any other time.
Definitely. So, myself, I was actually physically able to do a lot of this. I don't know how disabled folks do this, but I'd probably walk up to 20, 25 miles a day, just to get from one place to the next. To, you're always wondering where the next, not wondering, but you're always planning out your next move. Okay, I got to be at the First Presbyterian Church at 5 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock. I got to start moving that way. So you just really have to time everything to where you can get where you need to go to get what you need.
And some of those things that you need were what? Food?
Water was one of the biggest things and one of the harder things for me to get. Water, food, not so much shelter, but things that will keep you warm out there. Those type of things. I'd have to say the biggest commodity on the streets is socks.
Socks.
Clean pair of socks. When you don't wash every day and you don't wash your clothes very often, that can be really bad for your feet and you smell like a shoe eventually. So socks is like, people used to ask me like, well, should I give money to panhandlers? I said, no, you should keep socks in your glove box. I guarantee you those won't be left behind. I guarantee you those will be used.
I'm glad that you brought this up. I've got 2 young boys. They're 9 and 11, and I live in a city in Columbus, Ohio. So, a lot of times we see people asking for money as, we come through an intersection or off the highway. And the kids, my youngest especially, is like, Dad, why don't you give them money? And I'm like, how do you explain to a 9-year-old?
Yeah.
But it got me thinking, like, what could I do that would be helpful? And so you're saying socks.
Oh, yeah.
Socks is a big one. What about food? Like, is there particular food items or bottled water maybe?
water, like I say, water's a little harder to get because you're not really wanted in any place where you can get water. So bottled water, granola bars, usually got eaten. But I can't say this for everyone out there flying a sign, but most of them are A campers, what we call them, alcohol camp, and they're just flying sign for money for alcohol. But uh, what my mom and I get my mom to do this as well. She'll see somebody flying a sign, she'll drive through McDonald's drive-through and get the cheapest value meal for them, and they'll eat it. The folks eat it, and that's another way of doing that. But socks are the number one commodity out there.
Wow. So socks, bottled water, food.
Yeah.
But so, and you seem to be saying what I'm trying to explain to my 9-year-old: money is not a good idea.
No, because you might be an enabler. Someone might overdose from using that money, something like that, and you would never know that, but you could think that. But what I do now is I keep my cards, my business cards, and what I tell people is like, when you're ready to change, give me a call. When you're ready to do something different, give us a call. We'll help you.
So, yeah, in a couple minutes, I want to get to the story of how you came to be at Bridge House. But I don't know. I've got some more questions here first. What's something that would most surprise people about being homeless?
This is a little harder to answer. To me, the most surprising thing is I've probably met the best people I've ever met in my life at the very bottom of society. They're good. There's a lot of good people. There's professionals. There's artists. There's writers. Just moms and dads. Addiction and a few missed checks can put you out there. And they're good people. Most of the people I met were good people. There's always people out there to take advantage and whatnot. But that's I think would surprise people most about homelessness. I have another stat for that, but I wanted to get into it on one of the other questions that you're asking. But it's a very surprising stat that would really surprise folks.
Actually, well, let's go ahead and hear it. Yeah, let's just move right into it.
Well, 40 to 45% of homeless people have a full-time job. They just can't get housing. It's too expensive. They don't get a break to be able to save their money. But that really opens people's eyes. Almost 50% of the homeless population has a full-time job.
Okay, that does blow my mind, because there's this stigma of, you see these people on the street and you're like, man, I've been seeing all these like help wanted signs all over town. Like, if you need something, like, go up there, get a job, start working, right? But I'm missing something. You're starting to connect some dots here for me.
Definitely, and that's kind of where I had that stat for that question. It's not as easy as that. It's easy to say, go get a job. I've had people scream it at me, and I just chuckle to myself like, I smell like a shoe 30 feet away. I don't have clean clothes. I have no way of getting to a job. I have no way of maintaining that at the current moment where I'm in. And it's a silly thing to say, unless you've experienced it. It's hard to understand. But just saying, go get a job, even if you don't have mental health issues, you're experiencing some mental health issues if you're out on the streets, because you're always kind of wondering if the cops are going to mess with you, or anything that can happen. I can't think of anything else right now, but mostly it was hiding from the cops.
Yeah, it's one thing you said that surprised me. You had to be up at the crack of dawn because you didn't want to get a ticket from the police. So you're homeless, you don't have resources, and they're giving you a ticket and saying, what, you got to pay a fine now because they found you camping in a non-camping zone. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. In Boulder, where I was, you could lay down on the grass at night, but as soon as you put a blanket or a sleeping bag over you, they considered it camping. So okay. It's yeah. Well, I learned right away that you don't sleep in the parks on grass. Grass in the summertime has dew on it in the morning, so you're always sopping wet when you get up, or you might wake up with a sprinkler in your face, and you kind of teach yourself how to hear that coming and be able to get up and out of there before you get sopping wet. Um, I do have to say, one of the biggest things I did when I was homeless was the quest to stay dry.
Okay.
Um, Even at 45 degrees, if you're sopping wet, you could die of hypothermia.
Yeah. And so how would you stay dry? Where would you go? What would you do?
Um, the places where I would pick where squats are, you would be able to maybe put up a tarp, or it would be on their little awning, something like that, where you could stay dry. Plus, the next day at the library, which, a lot of homeless folks hang out at least the one in Boulder, on the outer area, they had a heating system where you can take your jacket off and put it there for a little bit and get it dried out while you're reading a book and kind of waiting to go to the next feed.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
I got to go back to that stat, Chad. 40 to 45% of homeless people have a full-time job. That blows my mind. And then, what you pointed out, like, it's not so easy to just go get a job, right?
yeah.
So there's the mental health aspect. If you didn't already have some mental health issues, now you're living on the street and you're for sure dealing with a whole lot of stress. But just the hygiene component of it, right? McDonald's doesn't want you working there if, you said you smell like a shoe. And
Yeah.
so it's not only that, people have to want to work. It's, I've got to have access to clean clothes, a shower, so I can get myself presentable, right?
Yes, sir. And in Boulder, at the shelter, there was programs that you could get into if you're working. They would have things for that. But I kind of chose not to. Not at first. I was homeless for nearly 12 years, but off and on. But there's a point when, in my mind, for me, it became more of a challenge and a learning experience than anything else.
How so?
Well, I wanted to experience as much as I could in the homeless world. I've rode freight trains up and down the Pacific Northwest. Just did it because, well, I wanted to. But it just, I'm starting to stutter a little bit. Sorry, sir.
No, you're doing a great job here. So I'm kind of curious about, 12 years on the streets and you were moving from state to state. Is there some point where you felt like, hey, this is just my life now? Like, I'm going to be homeless for as long as I'm on this planet?
There was some deep, dark times when you lose hope. And you're like, well, I'm probably going to die out here. But for the most part, hope kept me alive. You have to have hope. Without it, you're doomed.
Now, everybody listening to this has been through some hard time in their life, some challenge, and some are darker than others. But, for a lot of us, myself included, I've always had the comfort of going back to my home, which is dry, it's climate controlled, I've got food in the refrigerator. Like, as hard as everything else might be out here, I've got this place of respite that I can go back to. I can recharge my batteries. I can think about what's next. When you're homeless, you don't have that respite, right? Your central nervous system has got to constantly be on guard. There's never a time to relax.
Yes, sir. It's called hypervigilance. I've been off the streets. It'll be 15 years in February. And I still carry a bunch of hypervigilance with me. I find myself looking for squats while I'm driving. Those things never go away. I can't ever sleep past 4:30 in the morning anymore. It is so ingrained in me. No matter when I go to bed, I'm up at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
The hypervigilance is, I guess you would call it PTSD. You might carry some of that around, but I tried to rearrange the hypervigilance into other things. Like paying attention to all my surroundings all the time turned into watching how folks are and seeing if their demeanor is changing, and it'd be a marker to see if they possibly are using alcohol or drugs again.
Okay.
So you just kind of change a lot of that. But some of the hypervigilance just
You can't turn it off. So you're trying to redirect that into other things that might be more constructive for where your life is today.
definitely.
Yeah.
I picked up some really good habits when I was out there too. It was I used to read books. It was my entertainment. So I still read books, but a lot of it's fantasy and just sci-fi and stuff like that. But I'm always now I listen to them. I don't read them anymore. I'm a cheater now. But I'm wearing glasses today because I spent so much time reading when I was homeless. It blew out my eyes.
And where were you getting the books from?
Uh, I was a pretty good ground scorer, and that means if people drop something like money or something like that, I usually would be the one to find it. At the public library here in Boulder, you could buy paperback books for $0.25. And this is something I did often. I would get the bestsellers and buy the books for $0.25, take them to the bookstore down the street and sell them for $2.50 a piece to be resold. And then I would go to another used bookstore and buy the books I wanted because I read books, so I'm really picky. So
how often did you find, or did you ever find yourself, I guess I shouldn't assume, in situations where you had to steal things just to survive, food, clothing, socks, whatever it is?
Yes, sir. It's not a very proud moment for me, but I probably got caught shoplifting food half a dozen times through the years. And every now and then I'd hit the Army surplus store and grab a new pair of pants. But that was all out of necessity, and that's my excuse for it. But it just the situation I was in. There was one year where it was starting to get cold. It was like October, and I just had sandals because it was just over summertime, and I couldn't find shoes at any of the places where you could go and get them for free and stuff. So I had to go to Goodwill and just put on a pair of shoes and walk out. It just I did what I needed to do to survive.
Those times where you got caught, Chad, what happened?
I'd wind up in jail. Not all the time, but it could be a ticket offense. But you write me a ticket, I'm not going to court, and I definitely don't have the money to pay a fine. So I was okay when they took me to jail because I could take care of everything within 3 or 4 days, and I actually got some good sleep and some food.
Did you ever put yourself in a position intentionally so that you could be taken to jail? No, it wasn't.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, my worst day outside was better than any of my best days inside a jail.
Okay. Oh, wow.
There were times when you're hitchhiking in Northern California in the middle of winter and it does nothing but rain and your clothes just fall off one day because they rot in the rain.
Jeez.
That's better than one day in jail.
Okay. So what was the turning point that made you decide to change your situation?
This is a funny one. It started with, there's a whole progression throughout the years where when I traveled, I learned things when I traveled. But what really did it was one Saturday morning, I was sitting there, it was cold. And I was like, God, I'd like to be home in my underwear in front of a TV watching cartoons. And it's one of the most simplest things, but I think that's where I was like, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready to move on and to do something else. I mentioned briefly about traveling. My last traveling trip was to Virginia, and I learned community there. Really, really cool little small town. Really strange small town. It was a place we called the folks there dreadnecks. They were kind of like redneck hippies. I don't know how else to explain it, but I was there, and this one of the community members fell and hurt his back, and he couldn't cut wood for his family that winter. So the whole community got together, and we cut enough wood for 6 winters for him. And I was sitting there watching everybody and what they were doing for their neighbors and how they cared for people. And I think that was one of the last things I needed to be able to move on from homelessness. I don't expect people to understand this, but it was very hard for me to give up being homelessness. Try to remember back when you were 5 to 7 years old and you were totally free. You could do whatever you wanted. But you still had your parents there directing you. Now imagine yourself being an adult, being able to pick up and do whatever you want, wherever you want, with nothing. So, once you learn to travel and how to navigate that, I traveled, well, I tried to stay out of the middle of the country because politics are a little harder on homeless folks in those areas. But you learn, you learn how to survive. Um, it, it, um,
You mentioned, riding trains up and down the coast, the Pacific Northwest. Were there other ways that you were getting from one state to the next?
Hitchhiking. We gas jugged it. That means where you're with somebody who has a car and you go from gas station to gas station and, ask for someone to put gas in your car. And, I didn't fly a sign. I was not a flying, well, I can't technically say that all the way, but I didn't like flying a sign. I only did it when I traveled, and I've just had a sign that said, just want food, and had a gentleman in Northern California test me on it once. He came up and he said, "Oh, you just want food?" I was like, "Yes, sir." And he's like, "Get in my car." So we went and he took me to dinner and paid for it. And we're on our way out. And he's like, "That's all you want?" And I was like, "Yes, sir. Thank you. Could you get me back to where we started, though?" And he whipped out a $20 bill and said, "I'll do that." So it was a great experience. Hitchhiking can be scary. I will not do it now. In those days, I hitchhiked all over the place. Got to be careful. There was one time where I was hitching with a friend of mine, and I'm really glad I had a person with me because we got into a car, and I instantly got the heebie-jeebies. This guy's going to try to kill us. He's like kind of creepy, and he's like, "I borrow my car from my grandma on the weekends to pick up hitchhikers and drive them places," and it just freaked me out. And I got out and I told my friend when we got out, and I was like, "Did you think he was?" He's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "I'm glad we were together because I don't think it would have ended the same way."
Wow. That's
So,
scary.
one of the more scarier times, but myself, my experience, everybody has different experiences out there. I didn't have too many times when I thought I was going to be murdered or something like that. This didn't happen. In fact, I was more scared of college kids than anything else.
College kids. Why?
Yes. Drunken college kids in a large group can go cuckoo bananas really quick.
Okay.
Yeah. I just put my head down and get away. People used to cross the street at night when they'd see me, and I just kind of laughed to myself like, I'm probably the only one around here that would stop someone from hurting you. And I'm not going to do it. I'm not that scary person. I might look scary, but I'm not.
So back to this community that you were around where people were, chopping the wood to help somebody that hurt their back. What was it about that particular situation that was the last thing that you needed to make a change?
Learning to care for others, and give of yourself without anything in return. I think that's what it was. I call it community, but if it's more, you give, but you don't receive anything in back, but you do. You preserve character, which my dad would love to hear, and things like that. You just helping people, it makes you feel good.
Yeah. When you spend so much time being homeless, do you kind of lose some of that definitely the community, but even the empathy for other people because you're so focused on taking care of yourself and just surviving?
No, a little bit of the opposite. Like I said, you couldn't really make friends, but we all looked out for each other. Boulder's it was a small community, and we would you might not like somebody, but if someone's messing with them, they're your brother, and you'd stand up for them. You really got to watch. If someone's bag was stolen or lost, you would give them you give folks what you have, what you could afford to give, and then try to help them get to a place where they could get what they need.
Okay, so this was sort of the last thing you needed, sort of this reminder of giving, of, doing for others without an expectation of receiving something back. And then how did that lead you to Bridge House?
Well, after that, I was traveling with a gentleman at the time, and we were all sorts. There's a big story around it, but we were staying at this gentleman's house or farm, and he had a little cabin on it, and we would work for $20 a day, 5 days a week, and ride into town once a week, and so we could get supplies. And living in a little tiny cabin with another person's that's a lot like you can, yeah, it doesn't end well. So we just started not getting along, and I got me a bus ticket out of there as soon as I could. Wound up in Boulder, and when I got back here, I was I think I might have been depressed a little bit, but I started drinking heavy. And my homeless acquaintances, friends, came to me and they said, "Hey, we're worried. You're doing this pretty hard." And that's when I was like, "Oh, yeah, you're right." So in the process of making this choice to get off the streets, I decided to volunteer at the place called the Carriage House, and it was the homeless day center in Boulder, called the Bridge House now. But I started volunteering 8-9 hours a day, 5 days a week, for nothing, and doing whatever needed to be done, cleaning bathrooms, serving food, cooking food, washing dishes, helping a client get somewhere when I was one. And they finally said, "You want to work here?" And I said, "Yes, that's why I'm doing this, for part of the reason, but yes." So that happened in February of 2011. I literally went from sleeping under a bridge a few blocks away to living in a house and having a job in 24 hours. Wow. It was a really crazy turnaround. They're like, at the same time they offered me the job, they said, "Well, this gentleman here says he would offer you a place until you could find one of your own." So, once again, one thing I had to learn being homeless as well is how to accept help. I grew up in a family where your family would help you, but you didn't ask for it. And it took a while to be able to accept help from others and feel good about it.
So how long were you volunteering there before they offered you the job?
Well, I got the job in February, so I started right after the Christmas time, somewhere in there.
Okay.
January. One of the coldest nights I ever spent outside was about a week or two before I got the job. It was 18 below out with the wind chill, and that was another another thing where I said, "Okay, you're getting older. When you were younger, you thrived on this. Now you can't." I wasn't able to carry my bag anymore as well all day long. My body was breaking down.
How old were you at that point?
38, just about 39.
Okay. Yeah, living on the street for 12 years has got to take its toll, mind and body.
Yes. Well, here I am. I'm 53 now, and I have some major back problems. I have some major knee problems, arthritis. And a lot of that is from doing what I did when I was younger. I knew I'd have to pay at some point, but it's starting to catch up to me now.
Yeah. So Bridge House previously was Carriage House.
Yes, sir.
Tell us more about what goes on at Bridge House. What are the services that you guys provide now?
Well, are you talking those days or now? Because it's changed quite a bit since that time.
Let's talk about what present day is.
Present day. So Bridge House is now. We don't have a day center anymore. What we offer now is what we call the three-legged stool, housing, work, and case management. We provide dorm-style living for folks, room and board. If you came through our program, you don't have to spend $1 while you're there, unless you have to get a driver's license. You don't have to buy food. We can get you clothing. We can help you save as much money as you can. Most people don't, but we take care of the basic needs, so you can start taking care and healing yourself. You can start focusing on kind of legal issues you have, some mental health issues, maybe some other types of things that are barriers for you to move on with your life. Mental health is a big one for us.
So you say you're not a day center. So Carriage House was a day center before, which is what? The place people could come to and just spend time during the day?
Yeah, well, there's a little tiny building and it's called the Carriage House because it was in an old carriage house. And You could come and get a cup of coffee. There would be bread and stuff. You could make toast, but there was always lunch available. It wasn't the best, but it was food. You could also get IDs, birth certificates, sometimes socks, and they did offer a shower a couple days a week. You couldn't take one every day, but maybe once or twice a week you could shower. Every now and then you could get a haircut, just basic needs. And some folks came to be safe. One other surprising thing is, and this is a statistic it just blows my mind, is nearly 100% of females that are homeless have been assaulted in some way on the streets or before. It's an alarming number. And the day centers make it a little safer for you.
Okay. So today it's Bridge House, and there's the housing, dorm style living, work. And so tell us more about the work. Are they doing work there at the site? Explain how this functions.
So when we accept someone in the program, there's a whole process. We fill out an application, we talk to you, we do an assessment. We call it it's called the ASI, and we learn more about you there. And then we accept you into the program. Then you become an intern for up to a month, and some people longer, if you're waiting for an ID. And they work they clean the house. So it's a great time for us to get to know the new folks and them to get to know us. Sometimes it doesn't work out. And that's what that time is for. So once we have our case management meeting, we accept folks that are in the intern program to be part of become a trainee. They start the outdoor work phase, or the work phase of the program. We have 2 social medias. We have a community table kitchen, and then the department I run, which is called just plain outdoors. We do very general landscaping, graffiti removal, trash cleanup, painting, just about any low-end unskilled job you can do. We have shifts from either 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, and some are 8. Depending on where you are in legal status is where you kind of get placed in those areas. If someone comes into our program on drug court, their afternoons are always taken in IOP, which is intense outpatient treatment type stuff. So that's why we offer so many different types of hours there. Then they come back to the house, either take a shower, go to groups. We have mandatory groups here that they have to go to, or they can go to outside AA, stuff like that. And then, one of the biggest things we really try to get these guys to experience is, this is your house. We just work in your house. Mm-hmm. So this is your house. And, take care of it. Shepherd, we try to get our clients to help shepherd the new folks and lead them in the right direction and keep them out of trouble.
What is that application process like? What are you looking for?
They're just basic questions. We're seeing, if you're actually willing to work a full-time job afterwards, where your mental health might be, where you've been, some of the legal stuff that challenges you might be experiencing. But most of it's getting you to show up. Because showing up is, if you show up, it says you want to be there. So, in the beginning, it was just a walk-in process. Now it's a little more involved with internet and phones and stuff. So, when they make an appointment with the intake specialist, if they show up, most of the time they get in the same day. If we can get them through some of the process, they have to run a background check. We do have some disqualifiers for the program, arson and sex offenders. Our insurance can't handle that, and I can't really send those guys out on my work crews, because we usually work near a school in the public view somewhere. And we, fortunately, there's other programs for folks like that.
And so is there a term to this program? Like, do you expect people to sort of graduate out of it? Or is this kind of this could be something that, as long as they're following the rules, they can stay in it forever?
No. That would be counterproductive on our end. So it's about a year-long program. I've left out a lot of stuff. Thanks you for reminding me. So the intern phase is about a month, and then I get either myself or community table kitchen. We get the trainees for about 7 months. Once they enter their 7th month, they start what we call employment classes. And from that point forward, they could start looking for an outside job. They still have to complete employment classes. It's resume building, how to do interviews, lots of mock interviews, those type of things. And then once they get a job, they're able to stay up to a year. We try to encourage, once you have enough money saved up, to make room for somebody else, but it can be up to a year. We've had some folks over a couple of years that there's some circumstances around it, maybe some cognitive issues where it's hard for us to find a job for somebody, legal issues where their legal past is pretty bad and it's hard to get past any kind of background checks for a job. So sometimes those things take a little while longer to work out.
What kinds of jobs are you typically able to help people get into?
We've got people of all different types of skills, but I would say the most jobs that we get filled are hospitals, cleaning up in the emergency rooms, cooking. We send a lot of folks to the airport to get jobs at the where they cook food for the airlines. We've had a couple bus drivers come through, and we've had several people get their CDL and are driving over the road right now with trucks. But most of it is, lower level, entry level positions, garage door places, HAVACs. We really try to push a career rather than just a job. So we try to discourage people from working at fast food places. Not that that's a bad thing or not a noble thing, but we want more of a career for somebody where they can work into a career.
And so as you're helping them with that transition into finding a job, how are you also assisting them in finding a new residence?
So that's another part of the program. So a third of what you make when you're working for one of our enterprises goes to your savings. A third goes to your pocket, and a third goes to a room and board. So most typically, if you don't call in sick a lot and you're there pretty much every day, by the time you finish the 7th month, you have about $2,500 saved up. So it's in that area somewhere, and you can choose. Some folks have chosen to put 100% into savings that they could, and they walk out here with $6,000.
Yeah.
So it's that's a mandatory part of the program. We put a whole lot of money and time and work into helping folks not figure themselves out, work through their issues, work through their stuff to get out, only to not have a place to go or be able to afford a place to go. The unfortunate thing is everywhere is really expensive right now, and the dollars really aren't available. We used to have some money that would come from either the county or the state to help folks get into housing, and that's gone. So it's been gone for a few years for us, but that's when we really, really got our savings program robust and operating it the way we really want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have that. Yeah.
And do you have good relationships with like a number of places that are like, hey, we appreciate the employees that you've sent us before. Consider us part of your pipeline. Please, continue to send us more folks. Or is it not as structured as that?
Oh, yes. With some of them, especially the hospital, which I mentioned first there, we have a really good relationship with them. And they're open to some of the pasts that our folks have. So they're willing to overlook the past because your past doesn't define you. That's a big belief of ours. So we look for partners like that. Right now we're in 3 different cities, Boulder, Aurora, and Inglewood. And the Aurora and Inglewood buildings Aurora's been there about 5-6 years, and Inglewood just opened. So we really haven't established ourselves in the community wholly yet. So a lot of that comes through the work I do with the cities, word of mouth. I can go back. I love telling this story, and it's a little off of what you're talking about. But so when I first got hired to run the Ready to Work, I was the very first person hired. I hired Isabel McDevitt as the director of it. She hired me to help build and run it. So, her and I, we went to the city of Boulder and said, hey, we got this idea. We want to put these folks to work. We're going to have 5 people. Would you like to start a contract with us? And they basically laughed at us and told us no. So we went back and we said, we'll do it for free for 6 months. And that's how we got our start. And the word of mouth from that is really, I get most of my new jobs from word of mouth from other city superintendents that they meet all the time and talk. So, hey, I just met Dennis Warrington from the city of Boulder. He says, you guys are great. Would you like to come to Westminster and do the same thing for us?
Like set up a whole new operation there, like new dorms and everything, or
no contracts for work.
Okay.
It's a big process opening a building that takes a couple of years most of the time.
Oh.
But no, it's word of mouth to where what we do aligns with social. I'm not sure the right word there, but they align. Cities are trying to help homeless folks and look like they're helping homeless folks, and we're there to do it with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a win-win situation. Our program also transcends political divides and lines. Everybody needs a job. Everybody needs some help every now and then, and whether you're one affiliation or the other, it works in your town. A couple years ago, Melissa and I, the CEO here, we went to a place called Denton, Texas, and helped them start a place called Ready for Work. And they, it's a little different from ours, but in this little town in north of Dallas, it's a little different than Boulder, a lot different.
Yeah.
And it's thrived there. I talked to the gentleman we helped them hire to run it out there all the time, and they're doing really good. The city of Denton loves them, and they're helping people get off the streets, which is my main goal. One of my main goals in life.
Well, that's great. I've got a good friend who lives in Denton. I'll have to hit him up and see if he's familiar with the program.
Nice. It's ran out of the shelter called Our Daily Bread.
Okay, Our Daily Bread. What specifically does your department do there, Chad?
Well, my specific job is to find contracts with cities or whoever, and then start working there. From there, I have my teams built underneath me. I have they're called managers of outdoor operations. Two wonderful folks. We're gonna have another one soon. But so our scheduling is a big puzzle because there's so many different moving parts. There's different hours of all this stuff. So they schedule out in the morning or weekly before. Each one does it a little different. And then we'll send folks out either to the city of Aurora, the city of Boulder, the city of Littleton, or we go work at the animal shelter in Adams County. And, we're a training program. So we train folks to learn how to work. There's a really neat recent experience I had with a lady in Inglewood. She came up to me and she's so excited. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, I got my very first paycheck I've ever gotten today. And that was cool. And she's a little older than me. So, and then, every time I ask her, I say, what you doing with your paycheck? You saving it? And she's like, I'm saving every last dime. So it just, we have some folks that's never worked a real job in their life a lot. They've either sold drugs or I'm not exactly sure. But and then there's other folks we, try to train people how to not have power struggles at work. You'll get the higher maintenance folks that have some anger issues and stuff like that. And that's part of the reason why they can't keep a job is they explode on their boss. Mm-hmm. So we recognize that. And sometimes I pull them into my office and let them explode on me, and then I work them through it.
Okay. What was that like for you, Chad, sort of making that transition from being on the streets to volunteering to now working in a, professional capacity?
It was interesting. So we were talking, Melissa and I, a few last couple of years ago about it. I got hired on to help start Ready to Work, a founding member, when I was 7 months off the street. So when I look at it now and we're 7 months working with me here, and I'm like, I look at some of the folks and I'm like, wow, I was a lot like that. It took a while to get used to and just I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought on that one.
No, you were doing great. I know that, making that transition from, being on the streets to now you're working in a professional capacity for the first time in a long time, probably some things that you had to get accustomed to, the idea of compromise, perhaps.
Yes, well, compromise was a big one for me. I was, I was on the streets and it was my way because it was just me. And I did what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And, you know, um, I had to learn politics as well. Politics goes along with compromise. And, I learned pretty quickly if I get 25% of what I'm asking for, it was a good day. So that was difficult to learn and accept, but it was something I had to do. I really had to readjust a lot of stuff in my life. I had to relearn how to talk to folks,
Mm.
um, and brush up my language and not be so blunt with things. And that was kind of like a hammer. 'Cause- and then I learned that's no way to really get people to do or to be with somebody
Yeah.
else, especially if you're trying to help them.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Of course. Uh, you mentioned mental health is obviously a big part of, issues that people are dealing with there and some of the support that you're trying to provide them. What does that look like, that mental health support or maybe even like, physical health support that people get there?
So, I mentioned earlier that we have an assessment tool called the ASI. That's where we find out for for us in our program, we serve probably about 35% of the homeless community. Um, some folks are just way too mentally ill. Some folks are just not ready to do it. But the mental health piece, we we encourage folks to see a therapist or a medication assisted treatment. It comes along with counseling, but um, during the ASI, we can kind of identify, where some folks' mental health is, especially by the meds they take. And we found a little sweet spot in there to where if it's not a certain amount of this and this, people are more successful. So we're not targeting folks, but we know what works best. A lot of times, we don't avoid taking younger people, but we found that most young people aren't ready to do this. Even if they stay sober through the whole program, they fall off the wagon pretty quickly afterwards. It's
Mhm.
just you're too young. You got to go through a little more before you're ready to give it up.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone who is currently experiencing homelessness, Chad?
Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. And when you're ready and you want to do this, come see us. I'm not going to force you because we don't do the work for our clients, our trainees. The trainees do the work. And the most successful ones are the ones that actually address their issues and work hard to overcome them.
Don't lose hope, I think, is a big one. It's a big message even for folks not experiencing homelessness, but I think it's one of those things that's easier said than done. From your perspective, Chad, somebody who's been through the ringer, 12 years on the streets, addiction issues, having to find a place to sleep, having to find places to eat. I don't know. What advice do you have for everybody, anybody listening? How do you hold on to that hope during those really dark times?
Um, keep your humanity. Um, yeah. For everybody, be as kind as you can to folks. You know, I find myself driving in traffic nowadays, and everybody's angry, and I let everybody in. I go out of my way to be kind. Um, it's just a better way to. I'm stuttering a little bit. It's just a better way to go. Hope, kindness, um, honesty, taking responsibility. All of those things together can make anybody successful.
I love it. What's your favorite thing or your favorite hobby, something to do outside of work, Chad?
I'm an avid fly fisherman. My entire family is. I got to take a few seconds to brag about my oldest nephew. He he's on the USA men's fly fishing team, and They won third in nationals this year, and him and his team just took national championships here in the States. So it's pretty cool. But we actually got him addicted to that when he's starting at 3 years old. But that's mainly what I do. That reading. I help take care of my mom. She's getting a little older. I lost my dad last year. And it just I like a boring life now. I like mowing the lawn and watering it. It just sitting on my porch, watching birds. It's so much better than stress and stuff.
What was it like reconnecting with your parents?
Well, that was a tough one. So traveled around a lot, and I sent them a letter here and there. I have one particular story. I was in the library in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I called the librarian over on the computer. I had a question for her, and she wore the same perfume as my mom, and I lost it. I hadn't talked to her in 2 or 3 years. So that night I wrote her a letter, and she said, "Hey, how you doing?" That type of stuff. And but as far as reconnecting back here, it was interesting. I got back from another traveling trip, and every time I traveled, I never knew if or when I would ever get back. Sometimes it took a couple of years, but I'd get back, and I had done some stuff in the illegal world before I became homeless, and it caught up to me. I got ID'd basically a day or two after I got back, and ended up in Jefferson County Jail. And somehow that my family found out about it. So we got reunited in a county jail visitors booth. It was pretty cool. But
it was pretty cool.
Yeah, for me it was.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't for my mom and dad. It's probably the last place they would ever want to be. But right there in that moment, I was like, God, I haven't seen them in so long. It's so good to see you. So that happened. And then I established more contact with mom after that, a lot. So, when I was still homeless, mom would come to Boulder once a week, and she'd take me to the Y so I could shower, and and then we'd go to lunch. And then, I'd see her the next week at the library again.
Mm-hmm. And so what was the timeline between reconnecting with your folks and you finding your way to Carriage House?
So there was a stint in there where I was really, really well connected back with them because I had spent some time in a rehab and I was doing well, and then I just fell off the wagon. But and then stopped communicating again. It's probably I waited about 9 months, almost a year, before I called my mom and said, "Hey, Mom, I'm living in a house and I got a car and I'm working." I didn't want to get everybody's hopes up again, and then just to let them down. Yeah. So I had to make sure I was pretty solid where I was before I did that again. There's so much you do to your family when you're in this situation where you don't realize it. You're like, I'm not hurting anybody, but you are. You're hurting a lot of folks. And yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I want to hear it.
No, it's just it still kind of makes you tear up a little. So I hear stories now of folks that their parents were awful to them and they had nobody and they still crawled their way out. And I feel for them because, your parents, they'll always love you, or always should.
I love that. Just one more question for you today, Chad. But before I ask it, I want to do a few things. First of all, anybody that's looking to get in touch with Chad directly, his work email address is chad@bhrtw.org, chat@bhrtw.org. And anyone who wants to learn more about what they're doing at Bridge House, it's boulderbridgehouse.org, boulderbridgehouse.org. And we'll have those in the show notes. Also, as a reminder to folks, if you want to get more employees access to benefits that won't hurt them financially and carries a financial upside for your organization, reach out to us at addbackbenefits.com. Finally, if you'll take just a moment to leave us a review or a comment on your favorite podcast app, I'll be forever grateful. Thank you very much. And Chad, so last question for you. A year from now, you and I reconnect and you are celebrating something big. what's that big thing you hope to be celebrating 1 year from today?
Wow. That's a hard question. Um, yeah, um, I would love to buy me some property and some acreage up in Wyoming, outside of Laramie, and it's a dream of mine. So yeah, I've lived some dreams already, and not that I'm thinking of leaving this place, but next year I would love to move on to the next big adventure.
Okay. And why specifically that spot in Wyoming?
Uh, you know, it's it's near Centennial, near the Laramie Plains Lakes. My mom, dad, and I, mostly my dad and I, spent a lot of time there when I was younger. My dad and I were seriously addicted fishermen, and we were madmen with it. And my nephew is. But yeah, that I just have a big connection with it. The entire family's been going to some of these places over 100 years.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, it. I'm happy in my job and I don't want to leave. But I'm pushing. I'll be starting my 16th year in February, or 15th year. I don't know. It's either one of those. And um, yeah, I'm kind of ready to live the next dream.
Sometimes you got to spread your wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, Chad Carbone from Bridge House, I want to be the first to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a great honor to speak about this with anybody. Um, yeah, the more I get out there, my main goal is to change people's minds on homelessness. It's not that scary, and it's your brothers and your mothers and your sisters and others as well. So
You've done a lot of good in sharing your story today. And I know the 16 years that you've been at Bridge House, you've helped countless people. So thank you for that.
thank you.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.